Hey gardening friends, it's been a while since I've given a quick tour of what I'm growing on my deck. We're getting to the last part of the summer growing season, so I thought I'd give a quick little update. For those of you who is watching this video or my channel for the first time, I grow all of my vegetables, most of them on my deck, but everything is grown in containers. So they're either grown in half-gallon whiskey barrels or any types of pots and containers, whether they're ceramic containers, or I also have some terracotta pots as well, and then a whole collection of grow bags. So I thought I'd give you a little update on what's growing here in the garden and talk a little bit about what I'm planning for my fall garden. So we can start over here in this corner, and I have several grow bags, and in this grow bag, as well as the grow bag here, I have bush beans planted. These are a variety called Potomac, and I have about 6 plants in each grow bag. These are 10-gallon grow bags. And I'll tell you, they have been producing like crazy. There's still a few beans on the plants that I need to harvest. But I planted these in the late spring, and they've been producing pretty much all summer in the 2 bags. And so what I did, I took these 2 bags, which earlier in the summer, I had collard greens growing here. And once I pulled the collard greens, I planted more beans, bush beans, and this is the French variety called Roc d'Or, and so that's what's planted here and here. And I planted about 6 plants. I've only had maybe 2 come up. This is actually a weed. Only 2 come up in this container, so I may replant that one. But I planted these for a late summer, early fall crop of beans, so those are just getting started. And then once the beans that I planted in the spring have finished this bag and the one over here, I will pull those and I will plant another fall crop of something else in those same bags. And then next in this corner, I actually had to pull these 2 plants out, but in this corner I have peppers. So I grow Italian roasting peppers as well as bell peppers. So in these 2 containers, these are Italian roasting peppers. You can see this one is, the one in the back here is starting to ripen a bit. So these are just really beautiful peppers. I think those were set before the heat wave, and then sort of in the middle there's nothing happening because it was just too hot and the plant would not set fruit. But now that we've had cooler days, you can see that it's starting to produce more fruit. Here's another nice size fruit growing there, and more importantly, you'll see on the top it's producing new blossoms, and hopefully those will actually produce some fruit as well before the end of the season. So this is the same variety, Corno di Toro roasting peppers, and this particular plant really did take a hit during our heat wave. It really didn't produce, it actually didn't produce any fruit until later in the season, and now you see that it's starting to produce fruit now that we have cooler temperatures. And I'm also seeing, some fruit forming, as well as it's producing new buds. One of the things I did do to help the pepper plants during the heat wave was to cover them with a shade cloth, a 40% shade cloth, and I think that really did help with the plants during the heat wave. I didn't really have any problem with disease or wilt. They stayed pretty healthy, and I think using the shade cloth really helped a lot there. This right here is a bell pepper. I think this is a purple bell pepper. Some of my labels got a little mislabeled. This is not an Italian sweet pepper. It's for sure a bell pepper. So I have a nice small bell pepper there, and there's a couple other peppers forming. And again, just like on the roasting peppers, you'll see now that it's cooler, the plant has started to produce fruit. And then in this whiskey barrel, there's actually 3 plants. And originally I thought these were all bell peppers, but they're not. So I think I may have gotten the plants mixed up. This does look like there's a small bell pepper there. And there's another one down below. And then this looks to be some type of roasting pepper. So whatever it is, it's growing. And kind of the same story. You see, it didn't have a lot of fruit production during the hot months of the summer, but you can see it's starting now to bloom and produce fruit. So really happy about that. So overall, they're doing pretty well considering all of the heat that we've had this summer. They've remained nice and healthy, and now they're producing fruit. Right here I have one grow bag that contains 3 cucumber plants, and it's really been a struggle this year. They immediately came down with, I don't know if this is powdery mildew or some type of mildew, but it immediately came down with this disease. And what I did was I just trimmed off all of the leaves, and of course during all of the drought that we had in the summer, it did continue to thrive and produce fruit. So I think I've been able to harvest maybe about 4 cucumbers off of these 3 plants, which isn't great, but I have one that's growing here. There's another there, and I think there's a couple more that I can't find just because I'm looking for them, but there's 2 more. And once those 4 cucumbers have fully matured and I've harvested them, I'm just going to pull this plant or these plants, and I'm going to repot them with a fall crop. I'm not sure what's going to actually go into this grow bag, but I'll refresh the soil and then I'll plant something else here. In the meantime, I actually started some new plants from seed separately outside of the container. So here's one. This is a straight 8 cucumber. This is what I'll be growing in the fall. And this is actually an extra 2 plants, but I've actually potted them up in other grow bags, so they've already started growing. So once these finish, I'll have new cucumber plants already in grow bags starting to grow for the fall. Okay, now for the stars of the deck, which are the tomato plants. So I have actually 7 different variety of tomatoes growing on the deck. And considering the weather that we've had, the wet spring, rainy spring, as well as the very hot heat waves of the summer, overall these tomato plants have done very well. They've produced well and they've stayed healthy. So I'm really fortunate that they've done very well. They continue to grow and produce. And so let's look at each plant. So right here I have a variety that I've talked about before. This is an heirloom. All of my tomatoes are heirlooms. This is an heirloom tomato called Flamme. It's about a 2-inch tomato. It has a bit of a fruity flavor. And this is my first time growing this plant, but it is prolific with a capital P. There are over 40 tomatoes on this plant. This is one plant, folks, and there's over 40 tomatoes on this plant. And I think I've harvested probably close to, I don't know, 20 tomatoes so far. So if you're looking for a plant that's going to produce a lot of fruit, This has done it. I've just never had this experience before. Obviously with cherry tomatoes you do have a large number of fruit, but this has really done very well, and so this plant will stay on my grow list for the future. I will definitely grow this again. And just as a side note, I do a little bit of companion planting. You'll see I have Genovese basil growing there, as well as some marigolds over there. And this is a little nasturtium that I started from seed. And then next, growing in these 3-gallon pots, I have some smaller tomatoes. Really, the 3-gallon pots are almost a little too small to grow tomatoes in. You can get away with it if you're going to grow determinate tomatoes, and they've seemed to have done pretty well. So the first one that I have here, this is a Martino Roma, and this is the determinate tomato, so it's only going to grow, you know, so tall and produce all the fruit at once. I imagine if it was in a slightly larger pot, this plant would have gotten a little bit bigger and maybe produced a little more fruit. But it has done pretty well as far as I'm concerned, considering the growing season that we've had. So this is Martino Roma. And then in this pot, this is San Marzano. By the way, this is the first time that I've ever grown Martino Roma, and I would certainly grow this plant again. And then this is San Marzano Roma. And you can see the fruit is starting to ripen. I've harvested some of the fruit already, and my friendly squirrels have also kind of had their portion. I do try to harvest my fruit early on, so these I'll probably harvest this evening, because otherwise the squirrels will come here and have a little bit of a feast. So I try to harvest most of my tomatoes early on. And in this third pot, I have something that I've grown for the first time, this specific variety. This is Brandywine. Again, another heirloom tomato. It did not produce a whole lot of fruit, actually, but the plant still looks very healthy and is doing very well. And right there I have one tomato that's just starting to ripen, so that. But overall, the plant has done really well, even though it has not produced an overwhelmingly number of fruit. You know, there may be 10 tomatoes, and you can even see at the top it's starting to produce a few more. Over here in this half whiskey barrel, this is Cherokee Purple. And again, overall, the plant looks really good. Most of the fruit was produced early in the season. I've harvested quite a few tomatoes off of this, and you can see there's a whole cluster of nice sized tomatoes that are ready to be harvested. If you go higher in the plant, you'll notice there's not a lot that have set fruit. It has not produced a lot of blossoms, and I suspect that's really because of the weather that we've had. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. You can see those aren't going to grow into tomatoes. So I think once I harvest this group, this cluster that's on the plant now, there's a couple of green ones, I'll let those ripen. But once those are ripen, this will be probably the first plant that I'll pull. And then I'll amend the soil and I'll plant some fall crop in this barrel. And then next to this, I have 2 cherry tomatoes. It's growing in one whiskey barrel. It's Chadwick cherry as well as sweet orange cherry. And they've done pretty decently. Again, these are heirloom cherries. They were not overly prolific. Good taste. Overall, I've enjoyed the taste of both the Chadwick as well as the sweet orange. But in terms of numbers, just not that prolific. But it does give you, a nice harvest. So I don't know if I would grow these again. So those are all of the tomatoes that I've been growing on the deck. And then right here, this is a green stalk that I purchased this spring. Again, this is the first season, and I was just trying out a lot of things. You can see I have some string beans growing in here. These are the French beans that I have growing in the grow bags. There's basil here. There's thyme. There's sage, lemon balm. So I just mostly grew herbs in this container. There's also some chives down here. You can see those. So mostly herbs. And I was just really exploring and learning how to grow in the green stalk, and I'll certainly continue. I really enjoyed the experience, and I'm not sure if I'm going to grow any fall crops actually in the green stalk, but we'll see. But I have plenty of herbs for cooking, and I can just come out my back door and grab some basil. I also have this raspberry. This is the second year raspberry that's really recovering from a tough season from last year, but it's actually growing a few berries, which I'm really excited about. So happy to see that this was able to rebound a little bit. And then this is a blueberry. I'm not sure of the variety, but it again is rebounding. And then over here in the grow bags, I have watermelon. I actually have 3 watermelon. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And these are sugar babies, and they seem to be doing okay. They struggled a little bit as we got into some of the heat waves, but they really did make a little bit of a comeback, and at least I've been able to get 3 watermelons off of the plants. I think there's 2 plants in this grow bag. And then this grow bag here, this is cantaloupe. This is my first time growing cantaloupe, and for much of the summer I didn't have any blooms. I don't know why, but now that the weather has cooled, it's starting to bloom again, but I think it may be a little too late to get another cantaloupe from this plant, but I do have 1. So again, this is my first time growing cantaloupe, so I'm pretty excited if I'm able to just get 1 cantaloupe out of this. I'll be very happy with that. And then these are grow bags where I was growing onions. So I harvested the onions, and I replanted this bag as well as this bag with zucchini squash. And this one has germinated. Nothing has germinated yet in this bag. I don't know if these are small plants germinating or not. We'll see. If not, I'll have to replant directly into this grow bag. So in my fall garden, I'm hoping to grow a little bit of squash. Hopefully the pest pressure is down significantly, and I'll be able to harvest some fruit by October. And then in this bag are the other cucumbers that I mentioned earlier that I started from seed maybe about 3 weeks ago, and then I planted the plants in the grow bag. So this will be my fall garden of cucumbers. And these grow bags, I actually grew potatoes earlier this year. So once I harvested the potatoes, I amended the soil a bit, and then I planted more Provider bush beans. So you can see 3 plants have come up there, and those 2 there. I may need to plant again, just so that I can have maybe 6 plants or so in each bag. But these have gotten started, so this will be part of my fall garden as well. I almost forgot. This is a blueberry plant that I purchased this spring, and apparently it's a late season producer, but we have blueberries, so hopefully this fall I'll have some blueberries to eat, and I'll make sure to get these before the birds. I will cover this with the net in the next week or so that as these start to ripen, the birds won't have access to them. Unfortunately, my other blueberry plant, the birds, they got to the berries before I did, so I really didn't get very many of the blueberries, but this plant is for me. All right, so that's the end of the tour, and that's everything that's growing on my deck. Happy gardening.